interested in liberation, everybody is, who accepts the path of liberation and is not attracted to the path of conditional life, is called yati, or a devotee. Such a person should first control his mind by thinking of the Virata Rupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, and then gradually think of the spiritual form of Krishna, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, after hearing of both forms. Thus, one's mind is fixed in samadhi. By devotional service, one can then realize the spiritual form of the Lord, which is the destination of devotees. Thus, his life becomes successful. Wow. Let me read that again. One who is interested in liberation, who accepts the path of liberation, and is not attracted to the path of conditional life, is called yati, or a devotee. Such a person should first control his mind by thinking of the Virata Rupa, universal form, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, and then gradually think of the spiritual form of Krishna, Satchitananda Vigraha, after hearing of both forms. Thus, one's mind is fixed on samadhi. By devotional service, one can then realize the spiritual form of the Lord, which is the destination of devotees. Thus, his life becomes successful. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is said, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimukte. If one wants to progress on the path of liberation, he should associate with Mahatmas, or liberated devotees, because in such association there is full chance for hearing, describing, and chanting about the name, form, qualities, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of God, all of which are destined in Srimad Bhagavatam. All of which are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. On the path of bondage, one eternally undergoes the repetition of birth and death. One who desires liberation from such bondage should join the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and thus take advantage of the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from devotees and also explain it to propagate Krishna consciousness. Okay, that's good. Very nice. Text 40. My dear King, I have now described for you this planet Earth, other planetary systems, and their lands, varshas, rivers, and mountains. I have also described the sky, the oceans, the lower planetary systems, the direction, the hellish planetary systems, and the stars. These constitute the Virat. These constitute the Virata Rupa, the gigantic material form of the Lord, on which all living entities repose. Thus, I have explained the wonderful expanse of the external body of the Lord. Thus end Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 26th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled A Description of the Hellish Planets. completed in the Honolulu Temple of the Panchatattva, June 5th, 1975. There is a supplementary note written by His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. In this Gaudiya Bhashya, its translation is as follows. Learned scholars who have full knowledge of all the Vedic scriptures agree that the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are innumerable. These incarnations are classified into two divisions called Prabhava and Vaibhava. According to the scriptures, Prabhava incarnations are also classified into divisions, those which are called eternal and those which are not vividly described. In the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in chapters 3 through 6, there is a description of Rishabhadeva, but there is not an expanded description of his spiritual activities. Therefore, he is considered to belong to the second group of Prabhava incarnations. In Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 3, verse 13, it is said, Astame Meru Devyam Tu Nabir Jata Urukrama Darsayan Vatma Nam Sarvas Rama Namas Kritam. Lord Vishnu appeared in the eighth incarnation as the son of Maharaj Navi, the son of Agni Ira, and his wife, Meru Devi. He showed the path of perfection, the Paramahansa stage of life, which is worshipped by all followers of Varnashram Dharma. Rishabhadev is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his body is spiritual, Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Therefore, one might ask how it might be possible that he passed stool and urine. The Gaudiya Vedanta Acharya Baladeva Vidyabhusant has replied to this question in his book known as Siddhanta Ratna. First portion, text 65-68. Imperfect men call attention to Rishabha's passing stool and urine as a subject matter for the study of non-devotees who do not understand the spiritual position of a transcendental body. In this fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 5.6.11, the illusioned and bewildered state of the materialists of this age is fully described. Elsewhere, in fifth canto 5.5.19, Rishabhadeva stated, Idam Sariram Mama Durvibhagyam. This body of mine is inconceivable for the materialists. This is also confirmed by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajanati mam mudha manasim tanam asritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental name and my supreme dominion over all that be. End quotes. The human form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is extremely difficult to understand, and in fact, For a common man, it is inconceivable. Therefore, Rishabhadeva has directly explained that his own body belongs to the spiritual platform. This being so, Rishabhadeva did not actually pass stool and urine, even though he superficially seemed to pass stool and urine. It's funny. It uh, that was also transcendental and cannot be imitated by any common man. It is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that the stool and urine of Rishabhadeva were full of transcendental fragrance. Haribol. One may imitate Rishabhadeva, but he cannot imitate him by passing stool that is fragrance. Haribol. The activities of Rishabhadeva, therefore, do not support the claims of certain class of men known as Arhat, who sometimes advertise that they are followers of Rishabhadeva. How can they be followers of Rishabhadeva while they are against the Vedic principles? Oh, that's a good question. Sukadeva Goswami has related that after hearing about the characteristics of Lord Rishabhadeva, the king of Korika, Venka, and Kutaka, initiated a system of religious principles known as Arhat. These principles were not in accord with Vedic principles, and therefore they are called Pasanda Dharma. The members of the Arhat community considered Rishabhadeva's activities material. However, Rishabhadeva is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is on the transcendental platform, and no one can compare to him. Rishabhadeva personally exhibited the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.6.8. Davan alas tad vanam ale vihana saha tena dadaha. At the conclusion of Rishabhadeva's pastimes, an entire forest and the Lord's body were burned into ashes in a giant forest fire. Okay. It's probably so. There's no nonsense people can touch his body. In the same way, Rishabhadeva burned people's ignorance to ashes. He exhibited the characteristics of a Paramahansa in his instructions to his sons. The principles of the Arhat community, however, do not correspond to the teachings of Rishabhadeva. Shiva Baladeva Vidya Bhusana remarks that in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is another description of Rishabhadeva, but that Rishabhadeva is different from the one described in this canto. Okay. End of the 5th canto. And now, that's the end of this book. We have to get the next book.
Reborn. So that's the
Okay. No, 6. Any one?
Yeah, we're making advancements. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama. There is a supplementary note written by His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada in his Gaudiya Bhashya. Its translation is as follows. Learned scholars who have full knowledge of all the Vedic scriptures agree that the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are innumerable. These incarnations are classified into two divisions called Prabhava and Vaibhava. According to the scriptures, Prabhava incarnations are also classified in two divisions, those which are called eternal and those which are not vividly described. Okay, anyway, that's the end of this book, Canto 5, chapter 26. Okay. And now we are beginning. Where are we? Okay, there's an introduction to this book.
Prescribed duties for mankind.
Yeah, there's a preface. We must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? Human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendency is toward one state or one human society. The ideal of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society. Nay, if the entire energy of the living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. What is that? That is Krishna consciousness. Or, in other words, Prabhupada is saying that one should have what's called spiritual communism. It's a nice saying. So he says the ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society. Nay, of the entire energy of the living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. It begins, therefore, with an aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmanasya to establish the ideal of a common cause. Yeah, in other words, there shouldn't be all these countries. There should be one country, and it should be Krishna conscious.
Mhm.
Human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. It has made rapid progress in the fields of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But there is a pinprick, like that. There is a pinprick somewhere in this social body at large, and therefore there are large scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There is need of a clue as to how humanity can become one in peace. Yeah, very good. One in peace, friendship, prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill that need, for it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. Well, that is what Srimad Bhagavatam will do, will fill the need, for it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. Srimad Bhagavatam should be introduced also in the schools and colleges, for it is recommended by the great student devotee Prahlada Maharaja in order to change the demoniac face of society. Kumaram acharit prajno dharmam bhagavatam iha durlabam manasam janma tadapi adruvam artadam. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.6.1. Disparity in human society. In other words, different opinions, or different opinions in human society is due to lack of principles in a godless civilization. There is God, or the Almighty One, from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and in whom everything is merged to rest. Material science has tried to find the ultimate source of creation very insufficient, but it is a fact that there is one ultimate source of everything, that be. That's what they've been looking for, but they haven't found it because they don't read Srimad Bhagavatam. The ultimate source is explained rationally and authoritatively in the beautiful Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, of course. Srimad Bhagavatam is the transcendental science not only for knowing the ultimate source of everything, but also for knowing our relation with Him, or God, Krishna, and our duty toward perfection of the human society on the basis of this perfect knowledge. It is powerful reading matter in the Sanskrit language, and it is now rendered into English elaborately, that's by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, so that simply by careful reading, one will know God perfectly well. Oh, God, it's a wonderful statement. So much so that the reader will be sufficiently educated to defend himself from the onslaught of atheists. Over and above this, the reader will be able to convert others to accepting God as a concrete principle. Very good. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the definition of the ultimate source. It is a bona fide commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, Srila Vyasadeva, and gradually it develops into 9 cantos up to the highest state of God realization. The only qualification one needs to study this great book of transcendental knowledge is to proceed step by step, cautiously, and not jump forward haphazardly, as with an ordinary book. It should be gone through chapter by chapter, one after another. And that's what we're doing. The reading matter is so arranged with the original Sanskrit text, its English translation, synonyms, translation, and purports, so that one is sure to become a God-realized soul at the end of finishing the first 9 cantos. Wow. The 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it deals directly with the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. One will be unable to capture the effects of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. The book is complete in the 12th canto. Each independent, no, the book is complete in 12 cantos, each independent, but it is good for all to read them in small installments, one after another. I must admit my frailties in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam, but still I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and leaders of society on the strength of the following statement of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.11 Tadvad Visargo Janatada Viplavo Yasmin Prati Slokam Abad Lavati Api Namani Anatasya Yaso Nikitani Yach Chinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a transcendental creation meant for bringing about a revolution in the impious life of misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literature, even though irregularly, is heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Oh, that's a wonderful statement by Srila Prabhupada. Tadvat Nisargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Slokam Ava Dahavati Api Namani Anatasya Yaso Nikitani Yach Chinmati Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a transcendental creation meant for bringing about a revolution in the impious life of a misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literature, even though irregularly composed, is heard, sung, accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Om Tat Sat. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, now we go to the introduction. This here. And there's
Pencil?
the pencil. Okay, so now we're on the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're going to read the introduction. This Bhagavad Purana is brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance. In the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.43. The timeless wisdom of India is expressed in the Vedas, ancient Sanskrit texts that touch upon all fields of human knowledge, originally preserved through oral tradition. The Vedas were first put into writing 5,000 years ago by Srila Vyasadeva, the literary incarnation of God. After compiling the Vedas, Vyasadeva set forth their essence in the aphorisms known as Vedanta Sutras. Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavata Purana, that's another name, Srimad Bhagavatam, is Vyasadeva's commentary on his own Vedanta Sutras. So why did he write a commentary to his Vedanta Sutras? Well, that's to stop others from writing speculative commentaries. It was written in the maturity of his spiritual life under the direction of Narada Muni, his spiritual master, referred to as the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literature. Srimad Bhagavatam is the most complete and authoritative exposition of Vedic knowledge. That's a fact. No other book that compares to this. After compiling the Bhagavatam, Vyasa imparted the synopsis of it to his son, the sage Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami subsequently recited the entire Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit in an assembly of learned saints on the bank of the Ganges at Hastinapura, now Delhi. Wow. How long did that take, though? It must have taken a long time. Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of the world and was a great Rajarsi, saintly king. Having received a warning that he would die within a week, he renounced his entire kingdom and retired to the bank of the Ganges to fast until death and received spiritual enlightenment. He stopped eating, basically. The Bhagavatam begins with the Emperor Parikshit's sober inquiry to Sukadeva Goswami. So here it is. You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die. This is Sukadeva Goswami speaking. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember, and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. So, Sukadeva Goswami is saying to, speaking about the Bhagavatam, it says the Bhagavatam begins with Emperor Parikshit. Emperor Parikshit's sober inquiry to Sukadeva Goswami. You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember, and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. Well, that is very good. especially since he knows he's going to die in 7 days. So he wants to know what he should hear before he dies. Sukadeva Goswami's answer to this question and numerous other questions posed by Maharaj Parikshit concerning everything about the nature of the self to the origin of the universe held assembled sages in rapt attention continuously for 7 days leading up to the king's death. Wow. The sage Sutta Goswami, who was present in that assembly when Sukadeva Goswami first recited Srimad Bhagavatam, later repeated the Bhagavatam before a gathering of sages in a forest of Naimisharanya. So it spoke, now the Bhagavatam was spoken to the sages that were living in Naimisharanya, the forest of Naimisharanya. This is after it was spoken first by Sukadeva Goswami. Those sages concerned about the spiritual welfare of the people in general had gathered to perform a long, continuous chain of sacrifices to counteract the degrading influence of the incipient age of Kali. In response to the sage's request that he speak the essence of Vedic wisdom, Sutta Goswami repeated from memory the entire 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam as spoken by Sukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. The reader of Srimad Bhagavatam hears Sutta Goswami relate the questions of Maharaj Parikshit and the answers of Sukadeva Goswami. Also, Sutta Goswami sometimes responds directly to questions put by Sonaka Rishi, the spokesman for the sages gathered at Naimisharanya. One, therefore, simultaneously hears two dialogues, one between Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami on the bank of the Ganges, and another at Naimisharanya between Sutta Goswami and the sages at Naimisharanya forest. Wow. So at one time, there are simultaneously two dialogues going on. Interesting. Furthermore, while instructing King Parikshit, Sukadeva Goswami often relates historical episodes and gives accounts of lengthy philosophical discussions between such great souls as Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. With this understanding of the history of the Bhagavatam, the reader will easily be able to follow its intermingling of dialogues. Yeah, there it is. Intermingling of dialogues and events from various sources. Since philosophical wisdom, not chronological order, is most important in the text, one need only be attentive to the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam to appreciate fully its profound message. So it's not going on, what you would say, in chronological order. It's jumping around in different dialogues. However, one should be attentive to the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam to appreciate fully its profound message. The translators of this edition compare the Bhagavatam to sugar candy. Wherever you taste it, you will find it equally sweet and relishable. Therefore, to taste the sweetness of the Bhagavatam, one may begin by reading any of the volumes. After such an introductory taste, however, the serious reader is best advised to go back to the first canto and then proceed through the Bhagavatam canto after canto, which is what we are doing. And then proceed through the Bhagavatam canto after canto in its natural order. Okay, Prabhupada, that's what we're going to do. The edition of Bhagavatam is the first complete English translation of this important text with an elaborate commentary. That's Prabhupada's commentary. And it is the first widely available to the English speaking public. Yeah, so by Prabhupada's mercy, we're able to read the Bhagavatam in toto and with also Prabhupada's purports so we can understand it. The first 12 volumes, Canto 1 through Canto 10, Part 1, are the product of the scholarly and devotional efforts of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder, Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and the world's most distinguished teacher of Indian religious and philosophical thought. His consummate Sanskrit scholarship and intimate familiarity with Vedic culture and thought, as well as the modern way of life, combined to reveal to the West a magnificent exposition of this important classic. After the departure of Srila Prabhupada from this world in 1977, his monumental work of translating and annotating Srimad Bhagavatam has been continued by his disciples, Dayananda Dasa Goswami and Gopi Paranandana Dasa. Readers will find this work of value for many reasons. For those interested in the classical roots of Indian civilization, it serves as a vast reservoir of detailed information on virtually every one of its aspects. For students of comparative philosophy and religion, the Bhagavatam offers a penetrating view into the meaning of India's profound spiritual heritage. To sociologists and anthropologists, the Bhagavatam reveals the practical workings of a peaceful and scientifically organized Vedic culture. Nice statement. Whose institutions were integrated on the basis of highly developed spiritual worldview. Students of literature will discover the Bhagavatam to be a masterpiece of majestic poetry. For students of psychology, the text provides important perspectives on the nature of consciousness, human behavior, and the philosophical study of identity. Finally, to those seeking spiritual insight, the Bhagavatam offers simple and practical guidance for attainment of the highest self-knowledge and realization of the absolute truth. The entire multi-volume text presented by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust promises to occupy a significant place in the intellectual, cultural, and spiritual life of modern man for a long time to come. And it says that this part is written by the the introduction, and written by the publishers of the book. Okay, so now we start chapter 1 of the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is entitled "The History of the Life of Ajamila." Throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, there are descriptions of 10 subject matters, including creation, subsequent creation, and planetary systems. Sukadeva Goswami, the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, has already described creation, subsequent creation, and planetary systems in the third, fourth, and fifth cantos. Now, in this sixth canto, which consists of 19 chapters, he will describe Posana, or protection by the Lord. The first chapter relates the history of Ajamila, who was considered a greatly sinful man, but was liberated when four order carriers of Vishnu came to rescue him from the hands of the order carriers of Yamaraja. A full description of how he was liberated, having been relieved of the reactions of his sinful life, is given in this chapter. Sinful activities are painful both in this life and in the next. We should know for certain that the cause of all painful life is sinful action. On the path of fruitive work, one certainly commits sinful activity, and therefore, according to the considerations of karma, kanda, different types of atonement are recommended. Such methods of atonement, however, do not free one from ignorance, which is the root cause of sinful life. Consequently, one is prone to commit sinful activities even after atonement, which is therefore very inadequate for purification. Yeah, so even though they've gone through a process of purification, they continue to sin. On the path of speculative knowledge, one becomes free from sinful life by understanding things as they are. Therefore, the acquirement of speculative knowledge is also considered a method of atonement. While performing fruitive activities, one can become free from the actions of sinful life through austerity, penance, celibacy, control of the mind and senses, truthfulness, and the practice of mystic yoga. By awakening knowledge, one may also neutralize sinful reactions. Oh, that's good news. Neutralize sinful reactions. Neither of these methods, however, can free one from the tendency to commit sinful activities. Wow. By bhakti yoga, one can completely avoid the tendency for sinful life. Hare Krishna. Other methods are not very feasible. Therefore, the Vedic literature concludes that devotional service is more important than the methods of karma kanda and jnana kanda. Only the path of devotional service is auspicious for everyone. Fruitive activity and speculative knowledge cannot independently liberate anyone, but devotional service, independent of karma and jnana, is so potent that one who has fixed his mind at the lotus feet of Krishna is guaranteed not to meet the Yamadutas. Yeah, God, oh, what is the problem? The order carrier of Yamaraja, even in dreams. To prove the strength of devotional service, Sukadeva Goswami described the history of Ajamila. Ajamila was a resident of Kanyakuja, the modern Kanoj. He was trained by his parents to become a perfect Brahmana by studying the Vedas and following the regulative principles. But, a big but, because of his past, this youthful Brahmana was somehow attracted by a prostitute, and because of her association, he became most fallen and abandoned all regulative principles. See, that's what happens. Ajamila begot in the womb of the prostitute 10 sons, the last of whom was called Narayana. At the time of Ajamila's death, when the order carriers of Yamaraja came to take him, he loudly called out the name Narayana in fear because he was attached to his youngest son. Thus, he remembered the original Narayana, Lord Vishnu. Although he did not chant the holy name of Narayana completely offenselessly, it acted nevertheless. As soon as he chanted the holy name of Narayana, the order carriers of Lord Vishnu immediately appeared on the scene. A discussion ensued between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraja, and by hearing that discussion, Ajamila was liberated. He could then understand the bad effect of fruitive activities and could also understand how exalted is the process of devotional service. What time is it now?
7:32.
So we're over time, right?
We have time.
We still have some time.
Yes.
Text number 1. Shri Pratik Sid Uvacha. Nivriti Marga Katita Adho Bhagavata Yata Krama Yogopal Abdena Brahmana Yad Asamshriti. Maharaj Parikshit said, O my Lord, O Sukadeva Goswami, you have already described in the second canto the path of liberation, Nibriti Marga. By following that path, one is certainly elevated gradually to the highest planetary system, Ramaloka, from which one is promoted to the spiritual world along with Lord Brahma. Thus, one's repetition of birth and death in the material world ceases, stops. Good. Purport. Since Maharaja Parikshit was a Vaishnava, when he heard the descriptions at the end of the 5th canto of the different hellish conditions of life, he was very much concerned with how to liberate the conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya and take them back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, he reminded his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, about the Nivriti Marga, or path of liberation, which he had described in the 2nd canto. Maharaj Parikshit, who at the time of death was fortunate to have met Sukadeva Goswami, inquired from Sukadeva Goswami about the path of liberation at that crucial time. Sukadeva Goswami very much appreciated this question and congratulated him by saying, Varian esute prasna, Krito lokahitam ripa, atmavit samata pumsam, shrotav yad isut ya para. My dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial for all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Bhagavatam 2.1.1. Parikshit Maharaj was astonished that the living entities in the conditional stage do not accept the path of liberation, devotional service, instead of suffering in so many hellish conditions. Yeah, that's still going on. So many people are engaged in sinful activities, although they could learn about Srimad Bhagavatam and avoid all that. This is the symptom of a Vaishnava. Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha. A Vaishnava is an ocean of mercy. Paradukha Dukhi. He is unhappy because of the unhappiness of the others. Therefore, Parikshit Maharaj, being compassionate toward the conditioned souls suffering in hellish life, suggested that Sukadeva Goswami continue describing the path of liberation, which he had explained in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The word asamsrishti is very important in this connection. Samsriti refers to continuing on the path of birth and death. Asamsriti, on the contrary, refers to Nivritti Marga, or the path of liberation, by which one's birth and death cease, and one gradually progresses to Brahmaloka, unless one is a pure devotee who does not care about going to the higher planetary system, in which case one immediately returns home back to Godhead. By executing devotional service, Tyakvadeham Punarjanma Naiti, Parikshit Maharaj, therefore, was very eager to hear from Sukadeva Goswami about the path of liberation for the conditioned soul. According to the opinion of the Acharyas, the word Krama Yogopavadena indicates that by first performing Karma Yoga and then Jnana Yoga and finally coming to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, one can be liberated. Bhakti Yoga, however, is so powerful that it does not depend on Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. Bhakti Yoga itself is so powerful that even an impious man with no assets in Karma Yoga or an illiterate with no assets in Jnana Yoga can undoubtedly be elevated to the spiritual world if he simply adheres to the Bhakti Yoga. The Mam Evaishasi Asamsaya, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8.7 that by the process of Bhakti Yoga, one undoubtedly goes back to Godhead, back home to the spiritual world. Yogis, however, instead of going directly to the spiritual world, sometimes want to see other planetary systems, and therefore they ascend to the planetary system where Lord Brahma lives, as indicated here by the word Brahmana. At the time of dissolution, Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, goes directly to the spiritual world. This is confirmed by the Vedas as follows. Brahmana sahate sarve samprapte pratis sanchare paras yanta kitatmana pravistanti param padam. Because of their exalted position, those who are on Brahmaloka at the time of dissolution go directly back home, back to Godhead, along with Lord Brahma. Very nice. What time is it now?
40.
Huh?
7:41.
We're over time. Huh?
We are at time.
All right, then we'll stop here. Are there any questions or comments? So we have started Canto 6 and finished Canto 5.
Very good.
Hare Krishna. So, takeaway from for today says, according to the opinion of the Acharyas, the word Krama Yogopabdena indicates that by first performing Karma Yoga and then Jnana Yoga and finally coming to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, one can be liberated. Bhakti Yoga, however, is so powerful that it does not depend on Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. Bhakti Yoga itself is so powerful that even an impious man with no assets in Karma Yoga or an illiterate with no assets in Jnana Yoga can undoubtedly be elevated to the spiritual world if he simply adheres to the Bhakti, if simply adheres to Bhakti Yoga. Mam evaishyasi asamsaya. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8:7 that by the process of Bhakti Yoga, one undoubtedly goes back to Godhead, back home, to the spiritual world. Well, that's the life of the devotee. However, yogis, instead of going directly to the spiritual world, sometimes want to see other planetary systems. And therefore they ascend to the planetary system where Lord Brahma lives, as indicated here by the word Brahma. At the time of dissolution, Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, goes directly to the spiritual world. This is confirmed in the Vedas as follows. Brahmana sahate sarve samprapte pratisanchare parasyante kritatmana pravisanti param padam. Because of their exalted position, those who are on Brahmaloka at the time of dissolution go directly back home, back to Godhead, along with Lord Brahma. But who wants to wait so long in the material world when we can go back immediately if we surrender to Krishna and stay on the level of Bhakti Yoga? One can be liberated. And it doesn't depend on going through all the previous things like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. Bhakti Yoga itself is so powerful that even an impious man with no assets in Karma Yoga or an illiterate with no assets in Jnana Yoga can undoubtedly be elevated to the spiritual world if he simply adheres to Bhakti Yoga. Mam evaishyasi samsaya. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8:7 that by the process of bhakti yoga, one undoubtedly goes back to Godhead, back home to the spiritual world. Okay, that's our takeaway for today.
Very
All right, are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, no question, no comments. Our takeaway for today is the following. Mam Ivashasi Asamsaya, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8.7, that by the process of bhakti yoga, one undoubtedly goes back to Godhead, back home to the spiritual world. Here it is. That's our takeaway. That means that bhakti yoga is the simple and sure way to go back to Godhead. And it says, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8.7 that by the process of bhakti yoga, one undoubtedly goes back to Godhead, back home to the spiritual world. That is our takeaway for today. Bhakti yoga is the best process to go back to the spiritual world, back home to the spiritual world. But yogis, instead of directly going, instead of going directly to the spiritual world, they sometimes want to see other planetary systems. And therefore, they ascend to the planetary system where Lord Brahma lives, as indicated here by the word Brahma. At the time of dissolution, the Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Brahma, will go directly to the spiritual world. This is confirmed in Vedas as follows. Yeah, but who wants to wait so long to go back to Godhead? Better we go right away. All right, my dear devotees, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, one question, sorry. Not related to today's discussion. May I ask?
Yes,
So, what does it mean by being envious of Krishna, Maharaj?
being envious of Krishna.
Yeah. Like,
Well-
what are the practical, situations where I might be behaving in a way that is indicating that I'm being envious of Krishna? Like,
Yeah, I understand. I understand your question. Well, the way to, let's say, guide yourself away from being envious to Krishna is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra very carefully every day. And then gradually that enviousness will go away. Undoubtedly, there is sometimes enviousness of Krishna. Oh, why did I meet the devotees? Oh, why I follow what Prabhupada says? I have to wake up early in the morning to chant my rounds. I was so happy before I could sleep in. It's all I wanted, and so forth. But actually, Prabhupada's program is to help all his devotees go back to Godhead. So the more we become determined to follow strictly Prabhupada's program of Krishna consciousness, the more we become qualified to go back to Godhead and have eternal life. So that's better than staying in the material world, birth after birth, no telling what the next birth is going to be. It could be an animal, it could be an insect. So to get out of that terrible situation of the material world, Prabhupada has given us the easy way to get out. Chant Hare Krishna, dance, have nice prasadam, associate with devotees, and regularly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, as we're doing right now. That means that we have a real interest in going back to God. And the process is full of nectar. Hearing all this knowledge and all the pastimes of the Lord is nectar. So, why should we rot in the material world with illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and so forth, when we can every day hear the nectarian pastime of the Lord Krishna and hear about great devotees like Maharaj and so forth? Why should we deny ourselves the nectar of hearing and chanting about Krishna's pastimes? It's only because one may hate himself or herself and being jealous of Krishna and not, wanting to hear. But if you want to hear, if you're excited to wake up early every day and come to class and hear and ask questions and have discussion about what's being said, that means that you're on the fast track back to Godhead. And the people that just sleep more and avoid coming to class every day, well, I feel sorry for them. They're missing all this nectar. This is like, a tsunami of nectar. So why should we avoid that tsunami of nectar? No, we should jump into the ocean of transcendental bliss that we're experiencing every day by coming to class, hearing, asking questions, and so forth. Okay, my dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. If there are no questions, there will be no more answers. We'll come back down from the spiritual world to the mundane world of everyday life, but with remembrance of the transcendental world. That's why every day we should hear twice a day about Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is what we're doing. Eventually it'll become 3 times a day because everything gets a little bit blurred around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So we should have a class at 12 o'clock every day also. Everything will happen in due time. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and bathe in the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Just look at these cantos, I think there's 18 of them, right?
Yeah, big books, yeah.
Yeah, and they're all big books. Look, how did Prabhupada write all this? It's unbelievable. He's definitely a transcendental person, not an ordinary person. Okay, thank you very much, my dear devotees. Have a good day. I'll see you later on at what time? At
7 o'clock, Maharaj.
what time? 7 o'clock.
Yeah, in the evening.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.